Max, that was amazing. Amazing presentation. Very, very impressive and very helpful to know that it can be a successful experiment. My question to you is that LA Unified is going to
Mm.
be implementing the same experiment beginning in January. And what do they have, about 8 million students, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm wondering, you know, how, how well, what are your thoughts about how well that's going to fly when you're dealing with, you know, such a huge amount of students and faction students, you know, to implement something across the board there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be such a huge challenge, which is why when they announced it, which is around the same time we did too, they gave themselves at least 6 more months to try to figure out a way to roll this out. I mean, we're a very well-resourced independent school here in Los Angeles, and even us felt extremely daunted by the task of making this work. And I
Mhm.
think the initial reaction was it's just not going to be possible. There's no way that we can pull this off on a scale of only 780 students. So literally, I think LAUSD is nearing 1 million students, which is impressive and an astronomical number to think about how they're able or how they're going to be able to do this. But I think it has to be just brought down on a level on a school by school basis, and that I mean, you're going to be faced with challenges and it's not going to be perfect. But if there is at least a community wide improvement, then that affects the well being of everybody. So it's
Mhm.
not that it's perfect, but that it's at least marginally better will be of benefit to everybody.
Well, I mean, there was a time when everybody smoked and they banned smoking everywhere, and there was a lot of pushback on that. So I'm kind of thinking it may kind of go that way, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in some ways, yeah, it's not too different. The challenge, I think, is like with smoking, they started with, well, you got to be like 10 feet away, and then now you got to do it across the street. This one's just going straight from using it wherever to now you can't use it at all. It's just a complete ban. The other thing I didn't talk about, which also helps a little bit, is that we actually have an escalation of violation that's pretty extreme. Not everybody needs to really be on board of this. At first violation, it's a warning. Second, you're already in detention. Third is a suspension, and fourth is a conversation about whether you're able to remain on campus. So it feels like an extreme escalation, but the seriousness of the problem, I think, really called for having, a real strong mandate in place.
Mhm.
Hey,
Thanks.
Hi, Max. I was just wondering how staff managed without their phones, because I guess they needed to role model.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this was a big part of the conversation and the rollout as well as how we're able to role model as faculty and staff. So we all faculty and staff are obviously not required to put their phones in a bag. They don't have to do the same. But we do ask them that if they are going to be using their phones to do them in a place that's more private. So not just walking around on campus, not in the classroom, but if they want to use them in the teacher workroom or in some of the offices, then that would be the place to do it. So that's been, I mean, I've noticed even for myself, I try not to pull my phone out and be very mindful, even when I want to check my schedule, because I don't always know where I'm going all the time. But I have to go find a private place to check it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it applies a pressure
it
slightly
does.
because everyone's become so attached to this
Yeah.
piece of.
No, I've noticed my days become a lot better too, not, just trying to role model this behavior for students. I feel more productive and, more connected to my colleagues and the students, and sometimes bored.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
so
Long
thank
may
you.
it continue. Thank you.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Going to Denise. Hi, Max. My question is, it's a bit tangential.
I have a lot of clients who talk about, and I've noticed this even in myself, once I start scrolling, it becomes very difficult to stop. There's
Mhm.
like, I know that's part of the way it's set up because there's that immediate feedback loop and everything that's going on. Is there any information you have or resources about helping people to, once they start scrolling, to limit it, and say, okay, I'm doing this for 20 minutes and stopping instead of, okay, I can't stop, I can't stop, I can't stop. So that's a question.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because with the parent concerns and what we saw was like, yeah, once they were left to self-regulate their technology use, as in like they got home and now the phone's at their fingertips, they just started using them more than they would have, right? They had to get their time back somehow. They've slowly started to self-regulate, and I think a part of that, and this is just, I haven't seen the research to back it yet, is that with more abstinence throughout the week, with more time not on your phone, the need to be on it also starts to reduce. So I
Mm.
think if you find longer blocks of time where you're not using it at all, and those times where you have to self-regulate, you won't have the same level of impulse to be on it again. So it's just kind of reducing overall use, finding places where you just remain completely abstinent instead of periodically. Because again, these companies work really hard and are spending tons of money to fight against that. So to think that sheer willpower or coming up with some strategies is going to beat them, good luck. It's
Right,
a hard one.
exactly. I mean, it is inherent in the whole model, right,
Right.
to get people addicted. So,
Hmm.
okay, so you saying abstinence is sort of
Finding blocks of
just say
abstinence,
no.
yeah, I think is kind of the best we've seen so far.
Okay,
As, mhm.
Thank you. Emily?
I just had some thoughts, Max. I'd be curious to hear any of your reactions to them. And one part of the presentation that really stood out to me was when you emphasized how the students reported less anxiety, actually, after not having that like constant thought that like I could communicate with my parents or they might be telling me something. And so it really made me reflect on like a child's anxiety versus their parents' anxiety, right? And how
Yeah.
the child's anxiety may be reinforced by the parents' expectation and by the parents' own anxiety, that like it makes the parents feel better to be able to contact their child at all times. And um, so that really stood out to me. And then I've been working with a client who is starting her first year of high school, and she's had just a lot of anxiety around a new building and new teachers and students. But what has really made her even more anxious is she brings up social media and how students use it within the school and how things can spread like wildfire that they're all having access to throughout the day. And she's been really harmed by it. I think you also mentioned even just children, teenagers not being protected or what is shared not being even moderated. And
Hmm.
so they have this idea that like I should be able to handle this or this is appropriate for me when a lot of the things, at least that my client has been experiencing, are very inappropriate. Um, and she's trying to grapple with this when I feel like it's so unprotected. And I've heard a counter argument to that saying like, well, if teens don't have their phones, how will they be able to connect with their peers and like be in on what's the new trend at school right now? And yet I've just heard so much harm, just from this one case. So I'm just curious how you would respond to that. And also, the parents' own anxiety about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one thing that I took for granted or didn't feel like I really well understood was just how different an experience it is for our current teens and preteens and their use of technology and staying connected with their parents isn't in the same ways that we think it to be, that it really is almost like this biological connection to their parents, that they've grown up with this ability, that there's not a difference between the digital connection and reaching out and wanting to talk to your parents, that they're almost interconnected. So cutting that off causes a lot of anxiety, but is also necessary for development, right? We know that this age of development, it's important for individuation in a way that they're not necessarily getting when they're constantly connected to their parents. And again, I think that's something we're starting to see, is that they're not waiting for what their parents going to think, what their parents going to say, what their parents going to do, right? Waiting for kind of that other foot to drop. I think the part about students needing being connected to their community overall, well, at school, I think like the technology is just a hindrance to that connection. That they will go on their phones and they'll see what their friends are posting rather than just going up and having a conversation with them. That they're trying to understand what the larger trends or experiences rather than just enjoying the moment with a few people in a group playing a board game. And that trying to understand and feel connected through technology, there's just inherently a disconnect. There's not a high level of commitment to those kinds of relationships. That they're a bit inherently vapid.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So I have Chris, Christiane, and then John.
I didn't understand the part of the Yonder pouch. How do you lock those phones or the disc? I didn't understand how this works.
Yeah, it's kind of it's simple but kind of funky. It's like it's a bag you can't easily cut. I mean, technically, and this was something we laughed about and thought about at first. So it was like, if they just found a pair of scissors, they couldn't open their bags. Which so far in 2 weeks, no one has made that attempt as far as we know. And we also wanted some negative reinforcement for that. So we decided if they do just destroy their bag, we're going to charge them $100 for a new one. It's beyond the cost of a new bag, but enough to try to deter them from just destroying it. But yeah, it's a neoprene canvas bag that has a lock on it. And the round thing you saw is actually, it's like an unlock magnet. So it's a magnetic disc that unlocks that lock. So it's not a key or anything, but something you just tap against. And then we have these magnetic discs placed throughout the school, but they're in lock boxes. So you can't access them until they're opened by teachers and administrators at the end of the day.
So each student has their own bag and it gets locked, and there's a general place where you unlock those magnets at the end of the day. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So throughout the campus, we have those unlock boxes.
Yeah,
But yeah, each student has their own bag.
okay. I just wanted to add that we had this at our school as well, a phone-free zone. And for a while it worked really, really well, but our school is now registered for an IT project, so every student has iPads now. And those iPads, they are formatted by the school, so there's not just free content all over.
Right.
But just to confirm what you said, that what we noticed is they actually talk to each other again. That's really great. So
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah, it's either that or stare at the walls. So, which again, I don't mind if they want to just stare at the walls.
All right, Christiane.
Max, I had other questions or similar questions about the mechanics of it, having been at an event where I dropped my phone into a pouch and then afterwards had to scramble in the crowd to find somebody to unlock it. So are the teachers the ones who are doing the unlocking, and does it provide an opportunity for a teacher to actually make contact with students at the end of the day? Kind of how's that, or are students just or is there very little engagement and just the mechanics, just the functional swipe and they're out?
Yeah, very little engagement. And actually, I think this was a big question we had, is like, who is going to have this power? Because it becomes a bit of a superpower, which then also can become a relationship that might be manipulated, right? That you have something I want or that I'm going to need from you. And so the unlock boxes are in stationary places around the school, and it's kind of like you never see really who's the one with the key unlocking them. They just kind of unlock at 3 o'clock, and it's mostly our maintenance staff that does it. But a few administrators also have the keys. But it's not like, oh, I know, like I have a key on my keychain, so technically I can unlock any student's phone if I need to, but it's not something I'm widely advertising. Because I know students sometimes will use the counselor's office for various reasons, and I don't want to have to navigate those relationships quite yet. I'm sure I'll get there though.
Very nice presentation, Max. Thank you so much for giving us this information. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Christiane.
John and then Katarina.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Max. This is tangential, but I'm thinking that over here in UK, we still have a lot of use of the internet in classrooms, whiteboards. So in a way, we're kind of giving a mixed message, really. We're saying this stuff is okay, but don't do this bit of it. And I wonder actually if we need to find a way of using the technology live less in classrooms to kind of take some of the cachet out of it or some of the kudos out of it, go back to the more mundane. And the other thing is really picking up on what Peter was saying there in the chat about contact and withdrawal. And over here, we seem to have an overemphasis on contact and not enough emphasis on downtime and letting yourself be bored and letting things arise from the ground. You know, it's like we have to do everything like that. And it's even in the way the media runs here, they talk about dead air. So if you're doing a weather forecast or a traffic feedback, you can't have any punctuation in it. You just got to go blah, 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 and be like Rush Limbaugh or somebody, you know, like there's no space. And that I think is we see it at conferences too. You know, we do it as adults. You know, we try and do too much sometimes. So I'm just aware of that. How do we actually bring in also a sense of downtime is okay?
Right. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good point. Thinking about technology, I mean, as a lot of people shared how they met and felt connected to Violet at the end of her life through technology, right? But
very true.
We here right now are in contact with each other through technology. And I don't think that's something we want to get rid of, but it's trying to find the nuances between types of use and technology and the effects it's having. And ironically, before I was saying that Violet intuitively knew what it was like to be a child, right? The childhood experience. And we as adults more intuitively understand what it's like to have a relationship even through technology. Children, it's not as clear. And that's something they're learning to navigate. And as they're developing, I think those boundaries are more and more blurred.
Maybe also you're encouraging us all to leave our phones away at home a little bit more, allow them a bit of neglect.
Yes. Yeah,
it's so easy for us to get addicted to.
The big conversation before this was keeping phones out of the bedroom at night, right, to help improve sleep, right, for sleep hygiene, and saying, okay, 2 hours before bed, maybe you put your phone away and you can read a book or have a conversation or do anything else but look at your phone to better improve sleep. And I think that's true for any part of the day, finding those types of blocks and times to improve general well-being or contact or relationships or, you know, even creative thought, right? Letting your mind wander.
So Katarina and then Cynthia.
I am aware, I am wondering, are some students in this process that were aware about some personal problems because they stop and look for some help? I think it will be a lot of change for a lot of them. In the future, maybe it a very more and more students to be or to look for conscience about themselves. So I am wondering if is there some of them?
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is like instead of just using their phone to try to cover up negative feelings, that they're looking for support instead. Is that kind of, yeah. I hope, yeah, that's a consequence. I'm not, I think, at least from me and the work I do in the office, that might be a little bit of what's happening, but I can definitely imagine that becoming more frequent as the school year continues. That they're going to have to need to find other places to soothe, right? Either through support through friends or teachers or through the counselor's office, and that they are going to be more confronted with some of those challenging feelings.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina.
Cynthia?
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Max, for your presentation. My question is also mechanics. How do you, for lack of a better word, enforce this in the mornings? Is it in the mornings that they come in and everyone drops their phone, or it feels, yeah, I just wonder how actually they get put into the bags, or people just say, no, I don't have it, or yeah.
Yeah, this is actually, I think the most uncomfortable part about this whole experience is probably the beginning enforcement of the policy, because there has to create an air of seriousness around it, because again, it is very serious. So in the mornings, we do stanchion off the entrance to the front, where we have administrators and teachers who are checking that students are putting them into their phone. So it's a bit like TSA flying, but with a lot more smiles and thank yous. I'm there every day, and we're reminding them to have their bags out, to make sure their phones are in, and then they're walking past us as they're showing us that their phones are in their pouches, you know, saying, good morning, how are you, how are things? But at the same time, you know, there's a bit of authority that's underpinning all of the engagements. But I think it's important for just creating a level of seriousness and importance of the issue. But it is, you know, it is challenging. I mean, it's a little extra work from all of us to make sure that it works as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Patrick.
You see, I hope,
Oh,
can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Max, that was a great presentation. Thank you. I have several things that I wonder if you could maybe either just talk about briefly or maybe put in the chat. One being the name of your school, and whether maybe even on your website there's a way that the policy is explained. I'm not sure if you went to the website of your school that you see. I'm thinking of other schools that may want to model after yours.
Yeah.
And also just curious because I work with a fair amount of kids who in the school system would be special education or 504 or IEP students that get special accommodations. And oftentimes, sometimes with anxiety, one of their accommodations is they have access to a phone quicker. I wonder how your school handles that. And then my final thing is just practical. I'd love to hear the maker of those funky bags with a little magnet thing, or you know how you access them, and also the study that you mentioned, the large study that you mentioned in your presentation. I'd love to get just a resource on that, and that you could probably put in the chat.
So with Max's permission, I'm going to share the slides.
I was going to say
with everyone that will have the links. And the manufacturer of these bags too.
Great.
So you'll get them.
Great.
And not just you. I think Patrick, there's a lot of interest in all this information, Max.
Right.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, happy to share the slides, so I'll send them out through our listserv here.
Yeah.
And then that'll have the links for the or the citations for the studies, as well as the manufacturer for the bags. And I'm always happy to chat with anybody who comes up. Patrick, you can send them my information, so we'll have that out there too.
And what was the name of your school?
Milken Community School.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. But not sure if it's on our website or not, but it definitely should be, having all that information.
Well, we'll have a recording to share with them.
That's true.
Merab and then Sue.
Very much, Max. That was an amazing presentation. It's interesting that in different parts of the world, in parts of my country, Karen was here recently, she might have interacted with some communities, and you find right now we are trying to get the children to help them to use the computer, because they are not able to, they don't understand it, and they're meeting it for the first time. But again, in the cities, especially in the rural areas, they don't have many computers to use, or even phones to use. But in the town, in the cities, we have 5 major cities. And in the cities, I think the parents, that's one of the things, among the many clients that I have, one of the fights that children have with their parents is the use of the phone, because sometimes they could stay the whole night on the phone and the parents aren't aware, because they have their rooms. But so that study, I think it's an interesting study, and presented in the city compared to presented in the rural area would give a completely different picture and results. Yeah, so, but it's an interesting way of looking at it, yes. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Mara.
So a couple more, and then I have a video of what we showed of Violet's, the video that we put together when we had Violet's online celebration of life. I thought we would end with that today. So, and we could take, like, let's say 3 more people, including you, Sue.
Okay. I'm assuming that this policy is being implemented beginning with first graders and going all the way through high school. And so I would assume that, you know, if you're starting off with this no phone policy when you're in first grade, it's just going to be the norm, right? As opposed to, it must be just a whole different experience for a senior to be their heroin taken away, you know, after years and years and years of usage. So is that the goal? It's going to start from beginning of elementary school, this policy going forward from now on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in our middle school before this year, we actually had a no phone policy, but it was mostly on a trust basis, right? We asked them to keep it in their backpack and not to bring it out during the day. You know, anecdotally, we heard a lot of students were going to the bathroom using their phones or hiding it in corners and finding places where they would use them if it wasn't, you know, with this current policy where we have to actually lock them and put them away, and there is such strict consequences. I'll share even anecdotally when I'm going through and I've, you know, noticed that there's not as many students wandering around trying to go to the bathroom during class. All of a sudden, people are not drinking as many liquids as they used to. So, you know, before we would have problems where students would leave class and go to the bathroom and wouldn't come back for 15, 20 minutes and miss nearly half the content, and that's already changed. But yeah, our seniors are the most disappointed in the policy, or at least were initially the most disappointed, because I think they see themselves as rightfully 1 year away from independence, and that this policy feels maybe a bit juvenile for them and unnecessary, and it's not going to really impact them in a way that it would impact younger generations. And I think a lot of that is fairly valid, but at the same time, they're also seeing the benefits from this. And like I was saying before, all of us, finding ways to find some abstinence from our use can see the benefits no matter what age we are. Because I think all of us are also intuitively starting to understand that the impact of being on our phones and our technology more and more frequently.
But this policy is being implemented starting with elementary school.
Yeah, we don't have an elementary school as part of our campus. We have 6th through 12th grade, but it's across the board. And so the younger students are having an easier time following the policy than our juniors and seniors. So when you saw that only 4 violations of our 780 students, they probably all 4 were seniors. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, Max, so Lynn, thank you for this agenda for this meeting. Both are just make it so just the perfect blend of honoring Violet, which is why we're here, and then also talking about a timely issue. And when Lynn, Sue, and I, who you both are here, so I know you know what I'm talking about when I say our first name for our training was 21st Century Perspectives. And the idea was that we're bringing Violet's model into this century because she wrote her book in 1978. And how can we make her model relevant to the changing times? And I think this is such a perfect example of that. And Peter bringing up this idea of contact and withdrawal in terms of the Gestalt theory and how that's relevant to this technology that students are dealing with and the educators who care about them are trying to help them with. All of it fits. So it was just really great. I think we could have more meetings just on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for all the participation. Max, that was fantastic.
Of course. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And thank you.